Hello and welcome to the part of my room I didn't really put too much stress in decorating because the camera never pointed here. I promise this poster's out of frame. But anyway, welcome back to another trailer deep dive and analysis. It has been a while. I skipped out on Discovery because basically I was home. I didn't have my computers. It was a really bad time. They've all been bad times. But we've just gotten a new trailer for Picard Season 2. I've already seen it. Just the once. I'm not going to show it to you now because that is copyright infringement, but it'll be linked in the description. If you want to watch that first, go ahead. I won't show all of it. Well, probably not, but I will show like all the relevant scenes that I'm about to comment on. And yeah, Picard Season 2, interesting one. I'll get into a bit before we get into this trailer. Picard Season 1 is one of the most interesting seasons of Star Trek to me because it wasn't good. Right? I mean, common opinion. I probably don't have to explain why I think that. It's been pretty well documented. A lot of the common stuff. A lot of the, like, individual ideas of Picard, and even how they continued a lot of the Star Trek universe, not all of it, but a lot of it, I did really like. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea. You know, I liked that. I liked the Romulan stuff. And of course, they got a new showrunner this time. I think Michael Chabon did Season 1. He's now an executive producer. They got two guys, and one of them, if I remember correctly, was the guy who came up with Moraine. I think I mentioned that in an earlier trailer reaction. If you want to see those, link there, the description somewhere. But yeah, not that episode, specifically the Moraine scene, which was fun. Like, I don't know, we'll get into it. I'll talk about it as we get into the trailer. But yeah, it's also the risky season, because Picard Season 2 and 3 are being filmed back-to-back, of course. So if Picard Season 2 doesn't fix the problems of Season 1, neither will Season 3. I mean, it's that simple. So it's kind of like, because Picard was always a 3-season deal. They might extend that, but that was the original kind of story. It's why Patrick Stewart joined on. So it's kind of defines the quality of Season 3, weirdly enough. Before I ramble, let's get on to the thing. Already, frame 1, if we're gonna look into it here. I've read a little bit online to see some other people's speculations before this video. The Lost Arena is flying around a sun, and there's a weird warp effect, we'll call it, the Lost Arena's never had. A lot of people kind of speculate it's the Borg slingshot, star slingshot maneuver, the thing Spock did so they could go save the whales. Whatever that name is called. Always an interesting bit of canon that they can just time travel, but no one ever seems to do it or bring it up, except randomly when they do. A lot of people are kind of speculating it was the Borg Queen is how they'd get back into time. I'll post it if I can find it. I think, and I actually be in the description of this video. No, it's not. I think I found a description where the Borg Queen was apparently the later parts of the show, so maybe that's not how they go back in time. It's kind of implied. This trailers have been like, there are ways of going back in time, and they show the Borg Queen. But yeah, this is a potential slingshotty maneuver thing. I've also just realized CinemaSins has the Bruce Almighty Moon. Good lord, that is not a pale blue dot in the corner. That is Mercury is not that big when you're next to the sun. Earth is in danger from being eaten by the sun. That's the plot of Picard. New season March 3rd. We knew that. It was announced a few days ago, but in case you missed it, you probably knew already because I told you to watch this trailer. Can we appreciate, though, I don't know if this is from something, but it's just like, I love a trailer that starts with official trailer starts now. I don't know why. I found that hilarious. So here's the fun bit. Right away, 2 Nova classes. In fact, no, those are Equinox, the Nova classes, because you can tell the bridge section is indented. Really wish I had my models on me here. But, you know, another price of in-person learning. But the frame, you can tell right at the end there, I think is a steam runner. And again, because I don't have my models, the steam runner class, I'm wondering if you can get a view from behind. Yeah, you kind of got impulsy stuff there. It might be a new class looking at it. I'm not quite sure that lines up. I think there's very clearly a steam runner later on. Lovely to see the old designs after the copy-paste fleet, the infamous copy-paste fleet. The Zhang He is fine. Nothing wrong with the Zhang He. It's that it was just the Zhang He. And especially, it's not like the TNG designs. It's the TNG movie designs, the Voyager designs. Which makes more sense, because the Dominion Fleet War really would have... it really did refit the Federation fleet. They do seem to be tiled a bit more like the Zheng He, what we'll call the 25th century style, even though it's not. But that might be the lighting. Like, bits of the Equinox look pretty white as they were before, and the Steam Runner is a bit more gray. It's really hard to tell. I'm alright with it. You know, they really are very faithful originals, probably more so than the Strange New Worlds Enterprise is to the original. But it's kind of like gels well with what I think they did with the motion picture era, where, you know, they kind of kept the same ships, they just gave them new paneling for better technology. But it is nice to see. Pretty era appropriate. I mean, you could get away with not having TNG ships. I think they should. You know, it's been pretty stable. Like, Starfleet hasn't been getting ships destroyed since the Dominion War, but you have had a lot of advancements. It's nice to see them. Yes, here it is. You can see very clearly the Steam Runner. Yep, that's an Equinox reflector in Equinox. So probably the same scene. Is it just me, or all throughout this trailer, I guess it is black there, maybe the gray, but I felt like the La Serena doesn't feel as red as it used to. It might be black, like maybe the ships are darker and everything because it's sort of a mirror universe plot. Not the mirror universe, but, you know, similar style. In fact, I can't tell if Earth, that's a Terminator or kind of polluted. I think, oh no, look. Earth has got a little defense grid, a honeycomb defense grid, which is interesting. But yeah, it almost looks like the La Serena has gotten a bit of a touch-up. And proper photon torpedoes. I think quantum torpedoes were blue. They probably should be blue, but wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. I did notice as well, actually, spent a lot of time on these ships, but they were shooty-shooty phasers that go pew-pew-pew. Not a Star Trek noise that I recognize. Not how phasers of those ships worked. Maybe they were refit, but I always kind of like the, you know, the more constant lasers. But it's the modern thing. And of course, new era. They can have more advanced technology in Picard. Yeah, and here you can see, actually, it really looks like they're going back in time, doing the slingshot maneuver. I don't remember what it's called. I don't quite recognize this metal, the medallion someone's looking for. I think it's new. But I did see trying to get that frame.
Here we go again.
Mirror Universe Brent Spiner. I'm gonna call it the Mirror Universe. I know it's not, but Evil Federation, basically the same thing. Just look at that. Brent Spiner not playing Alton soon, whoever he was. He's actually got a new soon. Well, this might be Alton. I don't know. But there's a new soon that's 2024 is the year. We'll get into that a bit, because it's actually a big year in Star Trek. And again, you just gotta love the Soong bloodline. Whatever genes the Brent Spiner genes are, they're even more prevalent. It used to be from Enterprise they'd go until, of course, Dr. Noonien Soong, who built Data. Now it's 2024 to 2399. The Soongs have not changed. Yeah, you can see as well that honeycomb defense grid. Probably inconsistently scaled from what we just saw from orbit, but Earth is isolationist or maybe under siege or something. Yeah, Earth should not have a defense grid like that. I noticed this. I wanted to see. I don't think that's the All Good Things Enterprise. That doesn't look like the Dreadnought, but it's definitely a more warship-y. I can't tell how much of this is like just kind of effect warp trail or nacelles. Much more angular and aggressive. I'm just looking at it, the bottom looks a lot more textured, like there's guns or something. Not the big one the Dreadnought had. Here, this, can I get it in the same angle? There we go. I think this should match up pretty well on the screen. You can see the nacelles are curved in this painting. They're a lot lower. They're more angular. I think they're even square. Almost Discovery style. Not Discovery style, but, you know, that kind of angular thing down here. And it's a very aggressive D, firing phasers, photons against the Borg. I wonder if they're maybe going for a storyline, because the Borg Queen's involved, of maybe somehow the Federation subjugated the Borg, or they're more cooperative. I don't know. It's interesting. That's a nice painting, though. Real aggressive, but that's a nice painting. Q, I think in this trailer, I hear a bit more Q in Q here. Maybe it's just because it's been a while. I think this bit was largely in one of the previous trailers. Yeah, it's just, I'm nervous because they've said, John Delancey said he's not playing the same Q. He's playing like a more mature Q. It hasn't been like 20 years for Q. It's probably been thousands. And here's the thing, right, is do I think that Q could have matured to whatever, you know, we're going to see in Picard? Like, basically, do I think Q could have become a responsible adult? Yeah. I mean, I even think that responsibility is kind of the natural progression for him at some point in his future. If you look at early Q to Voyager Q. Not necessarily a dead serious kind of guy. Maybe like some of the doctors, I guess you could say, the Doctor Who doctors, where they're, mature, responsible, but they still, they have fun. They're kind of like fun people, but also, yeah, in a crisis, they're kind of mature. The thing is, why? Right? Because the whole appeal to Q is that he's omnipotent, omnitemporal, omnipowerful. He's all the omnis. He knows it. He makes you know it, and he doesn't give a damn what you think. He's just here to have fun. Like, if Q isn't gonna summon a mariachi band in celebration, then why bring him back? Like, it may be an interesting development for the character, even a sensible character, but why do I want to watch it? Because if you take away the joviality, the comedy, I mean, it's I'm struggling with words, because if you take away the Q-ness, is how I describe it, the Trelane. If you take the Trelane away from Q, then that was his appeal. I mean, John Delancey's a great actor. It's performed great, he's done great, but without the joviality, he's just not as interesting. Even in Farpoint, he had some of that joviality, but nowhere near what he did in future episodes. And it's just, Farpoint Q isn't as good as all the other Qs. And the other fear is, I've seen some people say that they're afraid they'll make Q the villain. I don't think they will, but some people said, well, Q and Guinan kind of serve the same role of telling the other people what's going on, right? What's wrong, right? So they kind of seem redundant, and maybe it's fine, maybe it's not, but I don't think they'll do it. But my one thing is, the one Q episode I don't like is the Deep Space Nine one. Why? Because, well, quite frankly, Deep Space Nine was too dark for Q. At least the way they wrote him. There's the scene where Vash is like, I'm done. I want out. I'm back in the Federation. And Q is basically says, oh, no, you're mine. And like gives her back the disease and the promenade and just stands over her. Basically subjugating her. He's like, no, you're mine. You do what I say. I might be all fun and like on the outside, but no, you're mine. You're my plaything, essentially. And that's not Q. Q is often the antagonist. Yeah, sometimes he's the protagonist, but he's never the villain, with the potential exception of Farpoint. And after Farpoint, like, yeah, the trial never ends, but the next time we see Q, he's like, wow, we really misunderstood you. We're gonna elevate you to the level of the Q. Yeah, for the Q's own game in a lot of sense, but I don't know, Q is John Delancey, and John Delancey is Q. I think he's even said that before. Like, new showrunners, I kind of have to go in with an open mind. It's just, I'm nervous. This is not the La Serena. I don't know what starship it is, but if you can see down here, well, here you've got a Starfleet dedication plaque. This is Starfleet. It could just be one of the random equinoxes or stuff. You've got a bridge layout down here. Pretty generic. I don't know the shapes well enough to tie that to something. But also, if you look after this console explosion, that doesn't look like a La Serena corridor. It looks a lot like the Next Generation style. I don't think it's the Enterprise D. It's not quite right. It's 20 years more advanced. We've seen as well that kind of era's L-cars, Starfleet L-cars, showing up in production photos. Someone tweeted them. But yeah, We've got some proper Starfleet ships, sorry. They're at least seeing a bit of, which is nice. I can't quite make out. There's the ship right there behind Girardi. It could be a lot of things. The back of a Zheng He, it's vaguely Bird of Prey, Klingon-y. Kind of reminds me of some of the D5s. It could also be the La Serena, just distorted weird. I saw someone notice this. The greater city of Greater Los Angeles, which is new, historical site. Forward Avenue, historic district, is in, 10 forward, so that her address is probably 10 forward. Let me check. I can get to the Bell Riots pretty quickly, because if we go to Bell Riots, Sanctuary District A, there's no mention of Greater San Francisco, assuming I spelt that right. But I wonder if potentially this might be where the Bell Riots happened. That's kind of why it's historic. It is kind of weird. It looks really grimy for Earth of 2399. I suppose it's historic district. Maybe you kind of want that. I mean, it's not like there's garbage everywhere. I've been to historic districts of like Renaissance era cities. I mean, it's basically that. I mean, it's the old, just cleaner. There's not like chamber pot stuff all over the roads. But I'm probably starting to overanalyze a little bit, especially considering that sign so clearly states Greater Los Angeles, which is a city famous for a lot of things, but most notably famous for not being the city of San Francisco, where the Bell Riots take place. Yeah, it is. 10 forward. Reference time. That might be Quark. I don't think so. It's a bit weird. I think I'm just struggling with cursive. I can't quite read that. Beautiful design. Whoever does bars in Star Trek, like the Discovery's bar is fantastic. Can they design my home? Because I love these bar designs.
I'm gonna need some tea. Earl Grey, piping hot.
Whoopi Goldberg. I don't know much about Whoopi Goldberg as an actress, and I probably said her name wrong, but Guinan, great to see Guinan in. It's great to see through this trailer. I got the sense, like, yeah, that's Guinan. She's a bit older, of course, but it's kind of the Doctor Who sense again, where like the doctors don't age. But even though when the old doctors come back for like a multi-doctor and they're older, no one cares. And I think she actually looks a lot like Guinan in the original series, not the original, in the Next Generation. In her outfit as well, the way she talks. Like, yeah, it's Guinan. I feel like this could just be in an episode of The Next Generation. Well, no, squished down a bit, yeah. Yeah, I think, just looking at it, they've done a great job with Guinan, and she's still very Guinan. I tend bar, and I listen. I think I read she was going to be in multiple episodes, though, not just one. If I can find whatever the heck I read, I will link it in the description. But maybe take some of those comments about this mysterious article with a grain of salt. Oh, and someone pointed out, I remember on like the Reddit, they were saying that they were hoping this show seemed a lot calmer. It was a little conversation I came across, because Picard was way like actiony, in season 1. And Discovery has done a great job in season 4 of calming down, and giving room to breathe. I think the episode count is definitely a part of that. But someone's pointed out the trailer does have a fair amount of scenes kind of like this, where it does feel like, yeah, you've just kind of calmed down and sat down a bit. So hopefully the new showrunner, and of course the complaints from the past are culminating into something that happened with Discovery. It started in season 3, but in season 4 especially, of just Picard's better now. I mean, the first season of Picard probably didn't need much more work to become good. Still maybe tonally it's not where a lot of people might have liked, but it probably didn't need too much to get a good script out of it. Earth 2024 in San Francisco, nonetheless. I don't know the San Franciscan skyline, but people have told me with that highway trailer as well, it's San Francisco. 2024. Interesting year for Star Trek. And I knew the big one off the top of my head. I had to check. But the biggest thing... Well, no, I'll start off. If you're not familiar, maybe you've only seen modern Star Trek and you're here to hear someone who knows classic tell you about it. So, Earth sucks. I mean, basically, if you thought now was bad, as a lot of people do, Star Trek kind of diverges from the original, from like Earth's history, or at least we know it does. By the 1960s, the Cold War was a lot hotter. Both the USA and Russia had nuclear space orbital platforms, which has basically been illegal for as long as that's been possible. So like the space treaty didn't happen. There's kind of a breakdown of global communications. The United Nations fails at some point, is replaced with the new United Nations, which also fails. World War III is, I think, 2026. It's not long after 2024. But 2024, as you can see here, France sees widespread civil unrest amid student protests. Neo-Trotskys, so some sort of communist, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, some sort of Trotsky uprising protests in France. Yeah, Europe's falling apart. Earth hadn't solved any of its Cold War problems. Now, make the joke, sure. But, no, it's way worse. The world is about to enter World War III in the Star Trek timeline, and even closer in 2024. And World War III saw the collapse of all major world governments in cities. They're just gone. Presumably, they've been rebuilt. In fact, kind of weird, San Francisco would have an historic district. But yeah, it's bad. There's some, inconsequential things here. Buck Bokai plays a second season of baseball. A good thing happened. Ireland is reunified in the only episode of The Next Generation that was banned after a century of violence. So yeah, Ireland's not doing great. Terrorism was a big part of it, but clearly that's the change. A divided Ireland is the downfall of humanity. I know nothing about that politically. Maybe I shouldn't touch it. But the big one, August 30th to September 3rd, 2024, the Bell Riots in an outstanding two-parter. Future tense? Past tense. I always get them confused. It's past tense. The Bell Riots. So basically, sanctuary districts. We know there are sanctuary districts in Picard. The last trailer had like a sign in the background. Basically, America, as it never solved any of its Cold War era problems, basically, its solution to homelessness was to round up all the homeless and put them into these special districts. There are things kind of like it in other places of the world. I'm not here to go into the homeless situation in America, but they kind of quickly became very overcrowded. They're walled off, they're guarded, like, it's basically a prison. It's sort of the internment camp style. It's not a prison, but really, it's a prison. They're not doing anything to really help the homeless. It just sucks. They've been around for quite a while, decades. I don't remember when they were established. But the Bell Riots is a particular district in San Francisco. You probably should go watch this two-parter, past tense, before Picard. I think it stands on its own quite a bit. Deep Space Nine episode. It's going to be on Paramount Plus. You can go watch it. Season 3, episode 11 and 12. Basically, the homeless people get so fed up. There's an incident where like some extremists basically create a hostage situation, and Gabriel Bell, one of the hostages, the guy named after the Bell Riots, basically kind of ties it all together. And I won't get into it. You can watch the episode, but the whole point is essentially this goes disastrously wrong. The United States, as they do, responds in force. They get a report basically that the hostages have been killed. So they storm the sanctuary district, like thousands die. It's a bloody massacre, but the thing is, the hostages were never killed, and Gabriel Bell was killed in this assault. It's kind of like in the actual American civil rights movement. A lot of the atrocities of the South were broadcasted, and it created that national, this is wrong kind of feeling. And it was the incident that started the United States on reforming its Cold War era problems. Not that it did much good, apparently, as World War III was around the corner. But Gabriel Bell became essentially the figurehead, like a lot of martyrs in history. John Brown, was he one? A slave that was killed? Emmett Till, he kind of became that sort of figure. Not for race, he happened to be black, but it was the homelessness situation. He became that. I mean, he was one of those, just in the Star Trek universe. And as much as I say it doesn't do much good, apparently it does, because, you don't set your thing in 2024 in Star Trek if it's not about the Bell Riots. Unless, I guess, you are doing something about Ireland's reunification. Look, I'm on the Memory Alpha page for 2024. You can put that into Google's what happened in Star Trek in 2024. It's a list of 4 things, and one of them is baseball. That's not an accident. You don't. You don't just pick it. It's 2 years in the future, but it could have been 2022. It could have been 2021 when this season was probably supposed to come out. It could have been the year World War III happened. It could have been in between them. You don't pick 2024 unless you're dealing with sanctuary districts and Bell Riots. It's like First Contact, right? You're not going to pick 2063 unless you're dealing with First Contact. You just aren't. To pick a great example, it's like setting a historical about 18th century America, setting it in 1776 and not talking about the revolution at all. It's just about daily life in 1776. You don't do that, because 2024 is perhaps the second biggest date in Star Trek history other than April 5th, 2063, First Contact. And this is interesting for a lot of reasons. For one, you have the potential for a Cisco cameo. Also the others, I don't actually know. You could have Bashir, Jadzia, I can't remember their names. Avery Brooks has aged a little. I should probably add 2022. Avery Brooks can pass for his younger Cisco. But the thing is, if you bring in Avery Brooks, well, I've just said past tense already did it. They've done this story. The Bell Riots didn't happen. Earth, I think, was actually taken over by the Romulans or something in the Deep Space Nine storyline. And so, we know what happens if the Bell Riots don't happen. Alternatively, you could say, well, they fixed the Bell Riots in Deep Space Nine, but it went wrong. And now Picard's gonna have to clean up after that. But that kind of takes one of the best episodes of Deep Space Nine, one of the finest, political episodes of Deep Space Nine, of Star Trek, and says, actually, fixing the sanctuary districts was the bad thing. We shouldn't have done that. And it really tampers the message. It almost says Cisco should not have made the Bell Riots happen, right? And that really muddies the message. They have to touch on the sanctuary districts. And I know Avery Brooks doesn't really do acting since Star Trek. He's gone into teaching, his passion. I don't know if he'd be willing to come back. Probably not for a cameo. He'd need like an actual role, and it'd be very hard to hide that. Not impossible, but very hard. Well, here you go, Riker. Lower Decks hid Riker from us, which was amazing. But it's very interesting. 2024 is the Bell Riots. So I don't know if there's something Sanctuary District-wise that happened, because the obvious conclusion is if America doesn't fix any of its Cold War problems, that means the American people going into World War III are going to be much worse. Not as liberal. They were still all probably pretty conservative. I mean, World War III did happen. There were resource wars. There were everything. They're going to be more conservative than they would have been. Zefram Cochrane is an American. At least he lived in Bozeman, Montana. He was a pretty conservative guy, but he could have been way worse. I mean, look at In a Mirror Darkly. And so the kind of obvious conclusion is the American people, especially being the ones meeting the Vulcans, somehow that goes wrong. And somehow this leads to a future separate from the Bell Riots not really working out as they should. I mean, we don't know what caused this. It might have been Q. It might have been some mysterious big bad third party. You gotta have your final battle at the end. It's interesting. And if they really want to talk about homelessness, I mean, one of the reasons people talk about past tense so much, even nowadays, is because they said 2024. We don't have sanctuary districts, but there are a lot of places, including San Francisco, where Sanctuary District A is, that sort of thing has happened. I don't know their names. You can find these communities where it's the only difference is there aren't the police and there aren't the walls. It's the sanctuary districts, though. And so it's given credit for predictive power. Like, it's still as big a message as it is today. I think it's incorrectly given, and a lot of people find out, incorrectly given credit for being predictive power. They wrote about an issue of the modern time. They said, hey, if we don't fix it, things are just going to get worse. Well, since this aired in the 80s, the 90s, they haven't fixed it. I'm old enough now where I suppose I haven't fixed it either. They're worse. It's as simple as that. But the point is, as I said, we're not going to get into the American homelessness situation, but the show has ample opportunity to do so. Bit of a weird place for Picard to go in its main 3-season arc, and it feels like a weird, like, it feels over the top to say, if we don't treat the homeless with respect, we're literally going to enter a dystopian future. Like, that feels a bit extreme, but the year is not an accident. And if it is an accident, then somebody failed. Someone on the executive team failed, because it's just such a big year. You've got to at least mention the Bell Riots in the sanctuary districts. This bit's interesting. You've got this little kid, and Vulcan Romulan, he kind of looks like Sarek when Mark Leonard, played him. You can't tell either a Northern Romulan or a Vulcan. Does the mind meld? Can Romulans mind meld? Yeah, I didn't think so. Romulans, we haven't seen them mind meld. They can. I wouldn't complain if they could. I mean, they are Vulcans. They're the same species for all. I mean, I know they're kind of not. I guess we said there are some enough differences, but I mean, common ancestry and all. It seems like that guy grew up a little bit, and he kind of reminds me of Chris Brainer. There you go. Look at Chris Brainer. He was you could kind of call him the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs of this era in the Star Trek universe. Big tech guy. He owned Google, or he owned Facebook. He's Mark Zuckerberg. There we go. If Mark Zuckerberg was like a pretty good guy, he might be, but the Facebook has certain negative connotations. But anyway, I can kind of see that in the hair. And it's another point in dealing with the sanctuary districts, if this is where they're going. Here, let's just get them side by side. I mean, this is the child actor of this guy. I'd buy that. I mean, it could be coincidence, but again, 2024. If we're saying this is the kid and we're kind of showing him grow up a bit, I mean, this wouldn't be him in 2024. But it's an interesting enough parallel. I'm also, should point out, I'm face blind, and my partner says I'm crazy when I say stuff like this, but yeah. There are some concerning things, I have to admit, with the Borg Queen. We don't know if this is the 2024 Borg Queen or the 2039 Borg Queen. 2024 Borg Queen would be hard because she can't know about the Federation, but, alternate timelines. Basically, the Enterprise episode, the whole Borg time loop. I won't explain it here. Just Google Star Trek Borg time loop. You'll probably get it if you want it. But the point is, the Borg cannot know about the Federation in 2024. Remove this guy's eye and tell me this is not a still from Star Trek. This is Borg, clearly. XBs are being assimilated people. I can't tell. But as we're talking about the Borg, I'm skipping some scenes we'll go back to, but tell me this is not a screenshot from Star Wars. Yeah, see bits with Girardi that feel weird with the Borg Queen. I mean, that's kind of Borg Queen. She was always some sort of weird, sexy, creepy characterization. Very weird for the Borg Queen. But, I mean, hey, it's what she was. But there's a particular scene. What the hell was that? There was a particular scene. Okay, maybe it was in the other trailer. They actually released a trailer yesterday that was like basically identical to the first one. There was a scene where like the Borg Queen was hugging Girardi or something. I can't remember it exactly, but it felt weird. I mean, I kind of feel like the Borg Queen ruined the Borg. I honestly think that the Borg, after their initial appearance in Q Who, were a downhill. The original Borg were the sole instance of a proper hive mind I think I've ever seen. Everything else, even Best of Both Worlds. Best of Both Worlds was a small step down. The introduction of Locutus and everyone, I mean, ever since Q Who, the Borg have been a downhill. So, I mean, in one way, if you ruin the Borg Queen, more of the same. Again, I just don't have the faith. I know it's a new head, but Michael Caban's still an executive producer. Alex Kurtzman has had a hand in all of this. How much of a hand? I don't know. I'm not going to pin it all on him. But, you know, the point is there's enough of the same people. I just don't have the faith yet. And I wish I did, but I have to have the concern. This is an interesting scene I skipped over, where you have Q handing some vial, rather like in the sort of villainy way, to Brent Spiner's 2024 character. They're gonna make Q the villain, aren't they? God damn it. There are other ways you can interpret this, but the most obvious to me is, you know, Brent Spiner's character is the working with the hero, but you know, there's a risk. There's an element of risk involved, and there's the if our plan doesn't work, we need someone who can kill all the Australians. The Australians are going to cause the end of the world. If we can stop this one event, they won't do it. But the other way to do it is kill all the Australians. But it's blow up Kronos, right? That's what it is. You know, Picard and crew are the team of Discovery in season 1. They're Discovery crew. And Brent Spiner is Philippa Georgiou. And Q is the Admiralty in Sarek. And it's like, look, we kind of hope that, you know, we have a peaceful solution here. I guess in Discovery they didn't, so it's not a perfect example. But like, we kind of hope there's an ideal solution here. But it's a long shot, right? And so Q's like, here, Philippa, if we need it, if anything goes wrong, we need to use the genocide bomb. And Q, you probably could handle it, but it's the concern, and again, the lack of faith. And when Q's the villain, Q doesn't work. Q's been an advocate for humanity ever since Farpoint. He got kicked out of the Continuum for it. He had selfish motives for most of what he does. Yeah. But I mean, Q Who. Yeah, no, it is. In Q Who, he's the hero. In his own way, which, yeah, could have been done better, which I guess here's an example of this scene, where you can make it in a context where Q's doing the right thing. He could have done it without the bloodshed. What's his line? It's like, well, if you can't handle a bloody nose, you know, you shouldn't be out here. But his motives were, hey, the Borg are coming already. Again, look up Borg time loop. Yeah, the Borg are coming already. This is your heads up. In not the most diplomatic of ways, but he's been the protagonist in a lot of his episodes because that's who Q is. I mean, even all good things. He was the protagonist. Like, the Q are gonna wipe you out. Here is your chance. So please don't make Q the villain. The antagonist, if you want, go ahead. But the villain, there is a big difference between the villain and the antagonist. I really wish I had my models, but this blurry ship in the front here, that almost looks like the Vulcan shuttle thing from Discovery. Sarek had it. It was blown up season 1. A bit anachronistic, but as I said, we could be jumping all over the timeline. And 2024, I guess you could have it. It's a bit of a stretch, but whatever's behind it though, I don't know. It almost looks like a La Serena. No, you know what it is? It's that ship I couldn't identify before that I said kind of reminded me of the D4s. So maybe there is a third party. Maybe it's Earth. Earth probably shouldn't have technology like that in 2024, but I don't know. We don't really know what our space flight capabilities were. It's a bit vague in the Enterprise intro. Interestingly, I was just trying to see if I could figure out that logo. That's not a San Francisco police car. In fact, someone said LA? It's not quite an LA police car either. That's a nice car. But if you look at those logos, I was trying to see if maybe it's a sanctuary district or something. It looks like a normal cop, which the sanctuary district, I guess they might have been normal cops, but their uniforms had changed. That'd be something interesting to see if Picard stays faithful to that. But again, we don't know. I guess the change in the timeline is 3 days after whenever they go back to 2024. Who needs a heads up? But yeah, not too much. There's a Toyota advertisement in the background, but that's all I can say. Looks like there is more Borg trauma, I'm thinking, just with this little line here.
None of our tomorrows are guaranteed.
I'm gonna have to let go.
I mean, it's the obvious thing. You're gonna have to let go. He's traumatized. Flash to Borg scenes. Well, that's probably it. You have to work with the Borg Queen. You're gonna have to let go of what she did, what was in the past. I thought that was the plot of First Contact, but yeah, Picard's trauma with the Borg has been weird to me. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense he'd have PTSD, the stuff we've seen. What doesn't make sense is, you got best of both worlds. Next episode, Family, I think it's called, might be Brothers. I think it's Family. He basically deals with it, not fully. I think it ends where he's doing some counseling stuff with Troy, and it's kind of implied he's continuing this. It's very clear he didn't fix his problems. He got to the point where he can keep going, but he's got to work through things still, and then it never comes up again. In I, Borg, he even pretends to be Locutus with, no hesitation. Sure, I don't know if you can call it prejudice against the Borg, if it's correct, but, he really does not seem bothered by it until, of course, First Contact, he's getting, PTS dreams, and the whole plot is, as Moby Dick, it is there. I guess you could argue maybe the Borg have somewhat disappeared, they weren't as active, so it's not as in his mind, but it's just gone. And then First Contact, yeah, he kind of deals with it. It's not in the movies at all, but then randomly in Picard, it's kind of it's been there his whole life, and, he's never been able to get past it. It's yeah, that makes sense, but you're gonna have to reconcile it with the past 4 movies and 7 episodes where it wasn't really a prominent thing that affected his entire life. It was just a thing that cropped up every now and then. Hey, sorry, I've just seen in my other monitor, right here, police car and LA stock photo. Yes, that was an LA police car to protect and serve. It's exactly the same. So they're in LA. Which I don't know. As we saw, nothing particularly important in that year. The Sanctuary District was San Francisco. But hey, A plot, B plot. I wonder if they're gonna have this soon doing anything with robotics, because it was actually, whatever the character in the Enterprise era was, the 2150s, that started basically the work that resulted in Data. But I don't know, you got some weird computer thing here. Kind of looks like some alien display systems, but I could overanalyze. I'm not here to overanalyze. I'm here to thoroughly analyze. Paul Hastings appears to be an actual law firm. In fact, I think this is the building that they're looking at. I was seeing if it was a Star Trek reference. Here's the one you can see in this trailer. Department of Homeland Security. I don't know who would have done the sanctuary districts. Looks like admin services were kind of the government for the sanctuary districts. This scene kind of took me as, well, they're homeless, exactly like past tense. They're homeless, they're going to be put into a sanctuary district. They don't have papers or whatever. Definitely not the same uniforms. The uniforms in past tense were browny, gray, almost more military looking, and they were very heavily armed. A lot like European police, actually. That's kind of the norm in the European countries I've been to. Yeah, I mean, this is Homeland Security, not administration services, but yeah, interesting. You did see another glimpse of probably this same ship. Picard-era uniforms. Potentially Deep Space Nine, actually, I suppose. Actually, no, that is a Deep Space Nine-era uniforms, because the Picard ones had that very distinct bump at the bottom. And you could even see the gray undershirt right there, which Picard uniforms do not have. They have a black undershirt without a collar. But the Deep Space Nine style, Voyager style as well, this one doesn't have little V-neck in here. I guess we'll get Janeway's red. I mean, it could be yet another redesign, I suppose. It could just be saying these uniforms are still in use, despite God knows how many, 5 or so uniform changes between then and now. Or there could be some sort of time travel to the Deep Space Nine era, because that's a Starfleet uniform. That's not some sort of evil Starfleet uniform. So maybe that's what those L-car props we saw from before were. But yeah, that is very interesting, the Deep Space Nine Voyager era uniforms in Equinox and Steamrunner. That's when those ships were active. So perhaps maybe earlier that was actually a scene from around the time of the Dominion War. Yeah, what the heck is this? I'm sorry. This was the bit that I noticed earlier. Some sort of white, dead zombie man, like... That's just creepy. Maybe this is like the third party alien big bad, but yes, I'm judging by appearances, but this is also the era of Star Trek that had the Sound of Thunder, in which the Ba'ul were obviously evil because they looked like an evil pile of goo. And also, yeah, set design, like you usually do design the aliens for what the race is gonna be like. Don't quite recognize these ships. There's more... Almost look Ba'ul, but I think it's kind of just a generic alien-y pod. But I'm certain the Lost Serena's kind of got a black and white with highlights of red feel. It's definitely weird. Editing Nathan here, because looking at some of those frames again, those ships look a lot like Tholian web spinners. They could be something else, but the Tholians are interesting because, well, we don't know a lot about them. One of the bits of characterization we do know is that for whatever reason, they feckin' hate time travel. So it's possible they're actually Tholians. And so yeah, that was a hit. A good 56 minutes of recording. I hope you enjoyed. Haven't done one of these for a while. I hope you found it useful, especially if you've missed out on classic Star Trek, which you really should go and watch anyway. I definitely recommend watching Past Tense, though. It should be a pretty standalone episode, and it's a great episode of Deep Space Nine anyway, if you haven't seen it already. And maybe just as a fresh up, I will be reviewing Picard. If you've enjoyed this, definitely subscribe. I do the weekly reviews. I've been doing it for Discovery, Prodigy, Lower Decks. It might be a bit sketchy at first. It's a real busy time, and there's 3 weeks of overlap with Picard and Discovery. Everyone's probably celebrating that. I'm dreading the amount of, like, God, that's going to be a whole day of review work for me. But yeah, I'm going in with an open mind. I think that's the best way to say it. I think that's how we should. The shakeup, it did great things bringing in the new showrunner. I can't remember her name. I know, I made the joke, it was ironic that she burned Paradise or something. Michelle Paradise, the executive producer who ironically burned Paradise, like burn was in her name, I don't remember. But yeah, open mind, you know, it's not quite the tone I like. Setting it in a time 2024 where the tone of Picard makes sense, I think works. I think that's probably a smart decision. In the same way they made Burnham a captain, it didn't fix the underlying problem, but it set it in an environment where it's acceptable and it works. And I honestly believe that you can tell any story of any genre, of any theme you want, in any show, even these well-established Star Treks. The thing is, the more away from like that core theme you go, the more exceptional your writing has to be. I mean, Deep Space Nine did a very similar thing to Picard and did a lot of dark stuff. It also had perfection level writing consistently, and they could get away with it. But a lot of the best episodes of Star Trek really aren't the traditional Star Trek format. The Visitor, for example, is the single finest piece of science fiction ever written, and it's a character piece about just a guy who lost his dad. There's very little sci-fi or even Star Trek in it. Yeah, I mean, Star Trek deals with character-driven stuff a lot, but, you know, it's the sci-fi is more incidental. So yeah, I want to enjoy Picard. I want to enjoy all Star Trek, and I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, I hopefully can have fun. I can watch, you know, Guinan be Guinan. Hopefully Q be Q, and get moments. I'm sure I'll get something out of Picard. Season 1, I got a lot out of Picard. I didn't like the season itself. Much better as a binge. And my poorly explained, even though it is poorly explained, I'll link to that. It'll be in the end card. You know, that's a good, like, poorly done, but fun little look at Picard if you want to know my thoughts there. But yeah, I'm rambling, aren't I? And I should probably get dinner. So. Oh my god, that's right. I did get dinner before this, but this has taken so long to edit. I've been sitting here going, man, I should really get something to eat once I'm done. So I hope you enjoyed. Looking forward to getting into Picard. And I think I am. I really am. Want this to start. Want to get into it and see what it's like. And Discovery's given me, you know, these shows can improve. That's what Discovery has shown. So I've just crossed the hour mark. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you next time.